Open your grandfather's kitchen drawer and you will not find a blood sugar meter. In 1970, almost no American household needed one. Doctors called it adult-onset diabetes back then because that is almost the only place it showed up, quietly, in people well past 60. Today, more than 38 million Americans have it, and for the first time in medical history, doctors are diagnosing it in teenagers, sometimes in kids who have not finished middle school. 1 in 3 American adults is walking around with prediabetes right now, and most of them have no idea. That kind of change does not happen by accident. In this video, we are counting down the 7 decisions that quietly rewired how the American body handles food, starting at number 7 and working our way down to number 1. None of them were made to hurt anyone. By the end, you will see something easy to miss. This was never really about willpower. Stay with me. Number 6 will change how you see your own living room. Number 1 sounds like good advice, and that is exactly what makes it hurt. Dinner in 1970 was almost boring by today's standards. Meat, a vegetable, a starch, a glass of milk, maybe Jell-O if it was a good night. Soda came in a 12-ounce can and was a treat, not a beverage you drank with lunch. Sugar existed, but it came from sugar, plain and simple, and it showed up a few times a day, not every hour. A child's pancreas in 1970 worked like a musician who only had to play a few songs a day. It released insulin, cleared the sugar from a meal, and then rested until the next one came along. That resting time mattered. It is when the body's cells stay sensitive to insulin instead of getting worn down by it. When sugar arrives constantly all day, every day, the pancreas never gets that rest, and the cells that are supposed to respond to insulin start tuning it out the same way you stop hearing a smoke alarm that never stops beeping. Scientists call that insulin resistance, and it is the engine behind almost all type 2 diabetes. Nobody in 1970 knew they were protecting that system. They were just eating dinner. Number 7 finished what the others started. Through the 1990s, value became the word every restaurant built its menu around, and value meant bigger. Portion sizes across American restaurants and grocery products roughly doubled compared to what a 1970s plate would have held, according to researchers who have tracked this for decades. Bagels went from 3 inches to 6. A single serving of pasta at a chain restaurant could feed 2 1970s adults. Eating a normal amount by today's standards, off today's plates, quietly meant eating far more sugar, more refined carbohydrate, and more total food than the body evolved to handle in one sitting. But that was only number 7. Number 6 is the one that quietly rearranged more living rooms than anything else on this list. Cable television expanded through the 1980s. Home video game consoles arrived the same decade. By the 2000s, the internet, and eventually the smartphone, gave a child a reason to sit still for hours that had never existed before. A kid in 1970 who was bored went outside because there was nothing else to do. A kid in 2005 who was bored had a screen in the house that never ran out of things to offer. Movement that used to happen automatically now had to compete with something specifically engineered to keep a person sitting down. Number 5 happened outside, not in the kitchen. In 1969, about half of American children walked or biked to school. By the 2000s, that number had collapsed to roughly 1 in 10. Suburbs were built around the car, schools moved farther from homes, and parents who once let a kid walk 2 blocks alone started driving them everywhere out of a reasonable fear of traffic and a changing world. None of those individual choices were wrong, but added up across an entire country, an enormous amount of daily, incidental movement, the kind that used to happen without anyone trying, simply disappeared from a child's day. Number 4 was the normalization of fast food as a daily meal instead of an occasional one. In 1970, eating at a drive-thru was still something of an event. By the 1990s, the average American ate fast food multiple times a week, and in 1988, one major chain introduced something the country hadn't seen before, the option to supersize your meal for pocket change. A large fries in 1970 looked like today's small. The portions grew, the price barely did, and grabbing a meal on the way home stopped being unusual and became the way a huge share of America actually ate dinner. If you are finding this as fascinating as we hoped, hit subscribe right now. Every video on this channel uncovers the hidden systems behind the world you grew up in. Number 3 showed up in the cup you were drinking from. In the 1950s, a bottle of Coke was 6.5 ounces. By the 1970s, a can held 12. By the 1990s, convenience stores were selling 32 and 64-ounce fountain drinks, entire days' worth of sugar, in a single cup that cost less than $1. Soda stopped being a treat and became a default, something you drank with breakfast, with lunch, in the car, at your desk. Nobody sat down and decided American thirst should be measured in gallons. It just grew, cup size by cup size, until the old 12-ounce can looked like a kid's serving. Number 2 sounds, on paper, like the most responsible thing the government ever did about food, and that is exactly what makes it hurt. In 1977, a Senate committee released a report called the Dietary Goals for the United States. It told Americans to eat less fat and more carbohydrates, and within a few years, that advice became the backbone of federal food policy. It sounded careful. It sounded scientific. Food companies responded exactly the way you would expect. They pulled fat out of thousands of products, and when they did, the food tasted like cardboard. So they replaced that missing fat with sugar to keep people buying it. Low-fat yogurt, low-fat granola bars, and reduced-fat cookies filled the shelves through the 1980s and 90s, and almost every one of them had more sugar than the full-fat version it replaced. Americans thought they were making the healthy choice. They were reading the label the government told them to read. It turned out the label was pointing them toward the one ingredient that was quietly driving the disease everyone was trying to prevent. And now, number 1. In the early 1970s, the United States government changed how it paid farmers. Corn subsidies exploded, and American farmers were told, in the words of one agriculture secretary, to plant fence row to fence row. Corn poured out of the Midwest faster than anyone knew what to do with it, and food companies needed somewhere to put it. Around the same time, a cheap way to turn that corn into liquid sugar was scaled up for the first time. By 1980, high-fructose corn syrup was quietly replacing cane sugar in sodas. By 1984, Coca-Cola and Pepsi had switched almost entirely. It was cheaper, it was sweeter, and it showed up in bread, ketchup, salad dressing, and yogurt, foods that had never needed added sugar before. Nobody voted on this. It was a subsidy and a manufacturing shortcut. But it meant an American in 1985 was consuming sugar in places a 1970 shopper never would have thought to look, and it sat underneath every other decision on this list, quietly making all of them worse. So there they are, counting down from 7 to 1, a plate that quietly doubled in size, a screen that made sitting still effortless, a walk to school that disappeared, a drive-through that became dinner, a cup that kept getting bigger, a dietary guideline that replaced fat with sugar by accident, and underneath all of it, a subsidy that flooded the country with cheap sugar. None of them were a single villain. Stacked together over about 30 years, they built a food environment the human pancreas had never once had to handle in its entire evolutionary history. There is one group of Americans who mostly skipped all 7. The old order Amish, the same communities who never picked up the antibacterial habits or the peanut guidance you may have heard about in one of our other videos, also never picked up this diet. Researchers who studied Amish adults in Ontario and Pennsylvania found the men were walking an average of over 18,000 steps a day, working farms by hand instead of driving between rooms. Their obesity rate came in at roughly 4%, compared to around 31% in the general American population studied alongside them. Type 2 diabetes, which now touches over 1 in 10 American adults, remains rare in that community. They did not do anything special or restrictive. They simply never left the world that the rest of the country traded away one convenient decision at a time. So here is what this all really means. The bodies of Americans in 1970 were not stronger than yours, and their genes were not different from your grandkids' genes today. They simply lived inside a food and movement environment that, mostly by accident, gave their pancreas room to rest, their legs a reason to move, and their meals a natural built-in limit. Then, one well-intentioned decision at a time, that environment was quietly swapped out for one that never stopped asking the body for more. But here is the good news hiding inside all of this. Type 2 diabetes was never written into the American body. It is a response to an environment that had something essential taken out of it, and what was taken out can still be put back. The walk to school is still there to take. The dinner plate can still be a 1970s size. The soda can still come in 12 ounces instead of 64. None of the 7 decisions require a law to undo, only the same kind of ordinary, unremarkable choices that built the problem in the first place, made in the other direction. The dinner table from 1970 was real. The 12-ounce can, the walk home from school, the boredom that sent a kid outside, all of it was real. And so were the 7 quiet decisions that slowly traded that world in for a different one well-meaning choice at a time, while everyone was looking somewhere else. That is what we do here. We take the world you grew up in and show you what was quietly running underneath it. Not to take anything away, the memories are the whole point, but they deserve the full story, and now you have it.